Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. It's been a a few weeks. We got Price, we got Brad, we got Brendan, and we're here to talk about, let's start some of the buzzy stuff. Open evidence, making moves. Price, what are you hearing?
Yeah, so diving right in, some of the news coming out of this week was that OpenEvidence has seemingly made its first B2B sale or engagement with Mount Sinai in New York. Apparently, they'll be embedding their application directly into the EHR, which is interesting. Makes sense from a workflow perspective, but interesting, for a lot of the things that we'll talk about shortly and how that allows these products to sort of work in and around each other or compete with each other. And that EHR at Sinai is epic. That's not self-explanatory to anyone. So yeah, open evidence to me, being sort of the evolution of UpToDate and the idea that clinicians leverage it to see recent studies, verified research, get help in coming up with a care plan for the patients that they're treating. And now they're going to have this AI tool, which Healthcare IT News is reporting this as Mount Sinai's first enterprise-wide AI deployment across clinical roles, which was surprising to me considering I think they're live with Microsoft's dictation tool. But yeah, so first B2B sale for open evidence. It's interesting. It's cool. It also means a lot about where the market is headed, where they're headed, what other companies who might not have had open evidence on their radar will need to do in order to continually compete for physicians' attention, right?
Yeah.
And for value. What do you all think about that?
What's interesting is you said it's their competitor to UpToDate. They were doing a similar job to be done, right? They were providing clinical evidence, they were providing studies, but their go-to-market motion to date to this was totally different, right? They were ad-supported PLG. And so this is a new muscle that actually finally brings them into the competitive set,
PLG being product-led growth for those who aren't like Brendan and Brad always plugged into the...
You don't love acronyms? We're not going to just toss acronyms left and right, CDA, HL7?
I mean, well, those I do love because I understand them well. But so yeah, you're saying open evidence sort of went to market as like, hey, if you're a physician, you should download this app and it's free and useful to you, but I'll make money off of ads. Whereas UpToDate was that Wolters Kluwer? And it was a B2B sale. Is that right?
Yeah. You're charging a couple $100 a seat, your enterprise contracts with a totally different motion. That's just hard, right? Like if you're used to just saying, hey, pick this up, make it really frictionless for Dr. Smith, or actually you or me, like it's actually not that hard, as proven by the Doximity lawsuit, for anyone to sign up for open evidence and use it. Like you can just sign up. You do that, and you're building a very different muscle. Like, what are ads? How do we do ads safely? How do we go to pharma and monetize via pharma? Like, that's what they're historically done. It's always been a question of, okay, when they get popular enough, how will they lever over into enterprise markets to sell to? Do they have the muscle to go to the CIO, CISO, chief medical officer and say, hey, you should rip out UpToDate and put us in? That's been like, do they have that sales
It's a really
motion?
nice natural experiment of what is the right sales entry point for these enterprise that AI-enabled enterprise products, because every time somebody gets a strong enough foothold with a large enough client, they are looking for, okay, yeah, I'm doing your ambient note taking, but now I need to look at, can I do ICD-10 and CPT code generation? It does feel like, in the chart, open evidence is competing against Wolters Kluwer today, but they're also competing against the Scribes, and they're also competing against HAC coding applications. Do we have evidence of the RCM tools moving up into the chart? And then we have patient engagement, whether or not that's going to continue to follow the patient into the visit. It's really a question of like who can sell and what partnerships look like.
Right. And this is the Great Convergence has been happening, right? You have Abridge partnering with Availity for prior auth and partnering with UpToDate for clinical decision support. So the convergence of all the jobs to be done for the provider, not just note-taking, right? That Abridge has expanded to be a full clinical co-pilot, but there's always been B2B. And then you, like you're saying, the back office co-pilots are moving upstream. The front office co-pilots are moving downstream. And now you have this heavyweight of the product-led growth market saying, actually, I'm going to try and lever over and compete in the enterprise market. So that's just, that's going to be challenging because they are well funded, if nothing else, and they are aggressive, if nothing else. And they launched multiple things. They launched prior authorization.
Some tools may not even have an enterprise sales motion directly into systems of record or the care delivery organizations. Tanner's just going to go in with OpenEvidence.
Yep. Yeah. And I think the two things that come to mind for me, I don't know if you guys have an opinion, but like we think a lot about integration. I'm curious what their integration looks like with Epic and EHRs, and if they need help with that. I mean,
I don't know who would help that.
Who could help them with that? But two, ads. Like they can't possibly go sell to Mount Sinai and then be like surfacing the ads, can they? But I don't really see what we would assume not, but
it'd be sweet. It'd be sweet to be like in Epic, and then if you click a button, you can like buy tickets to the Knicks game that night because
Wait, but
because
they don't even have to serve ads. Like, I mean, who knows what the contract says, but all they need to know is that, these podiatrists are commonly following this care path and ending up at X decision. That data enriches the free product that they have. And ultimately, pharma is looking for better attribution. Okay, I sent my reps into Sinai and they're telling me that I have to pay their expense bill of $20,000. My providers aren't ending up on a care pathway that recommends my drug. I'm not saying that's the motivation, but that's a very easy product to build, and there's going to be a lot of pressure from the people who are putting up the money for OpenEvidence ads to get better attribution.
Okay, so I have two quick thoughts that I wanted to go over. One is just like the product-led growth concept, where OpenEvidence started by convincing, gosh, I feel like it was some absurd number, 30%
success.
of physicians
never,
in the country
ever
are leveraging
predicted
it. And I think a lot about tools that want access to clinical data, and how if they were patient-facing tools, then the patient would just need to authorize their access to clinical data. But guess what? No way in hell can you convince 1 million, 10 million, 50 million patients to download something. So the wedge of being like, oh, well, my end user is the provider. And then once you have a couple million providers using your software, then it's like, go tell your organization to just put this in your EHR. And then to Brad's point, you've got a business associate agreement. So, somehow maybe Epic and Oracle and Meditech maintain the rails of the clinical documentation or the RCM work, because that's what EHRs are so sticky for, is really that enterprise business that they're driving. But does the brain of the EHR and the insight of, if this care pathway, then this, and selling data to pharma or clinical trials start becoming a little bit more of a battleground?
What I would say is one tension here, when you are just doing clinical decision support, PLG, like PLG in healthcare is almost impossible because of PHI and HIPAA, because you have this tension of needing a business associate agreement. So if I go to Dr. Smith, who's part of Mount Sinai, and say, use my tool, it's just clinical decision support, well, great, fine. I can pick it up and use it. And Doximity previously had success with that for just doctor social networking, right? And then, some call SMS stuff to prevent them from having to use their own phone line. Like those are all non-PHI use cases. Well, now they're tacking on PHI use cases. And so that inherently has to be enterprise in nature, because Dr. Smith, by and large, can't sign a business associate agreement for, on behalf of Mount Sinai and give access to Mount Sinai's patient data. Like that tension of the subjugation of providers to increasing layers of hierarchy, in the consolidation of providers in America, mean that historically PLG products have struggled or just not been really possible. Like we all wanted the Figma of healthcare, and now we have one. But really, you're just seeing them mature into enterprise, because you have to do the harder, more valuable things. You kind of need business associate agreements and to sign agreements with institutions in America in terms of healthcare. And so that tension's there. And I'm curious, if they run into that as they try and offer these products and still maintain their roots as PLG, but also offer the really meaty stuff.
I just want to circle back that I think Price just came up with two incredible business ideas. And I don't know if you guys noticed it, but Price, I think you're suggesting UpToDate should get into the IAS space and use patients as their sales channel to providers. Pull down your records, and then UpToDate can tell you exactly what to drop into my chart to ask for something.
Well, here's the thing: OpenEvidence had patient-facing
Oh,
capabilities. They got rid of it. They got rid of it because it commoditizes. It commoditizes themselves in some way when the patients can go and access that clinical information, and it dilutes their ad to attribute ads and decision making for pharma. And so, like, I'm curious if they try and relaunch that in some capacity. But if at the end of the day, like, we're just sort of like putting LLMs over the corpus of scientific information in America.
isn't that what the economy is right now?
But like, if I'm a doctor and I can go just be a doctor or do access it as a patient, maybe I do that. Avoid ads. So like, it's just a weird that business model, that third business model of patient-facing clinical decision support, which I want for my potential thyroid thing. Like, I want to go look it up and understand the same way my doctor does. Can you have both? Can you have your cake and eat it too? They're seeing if they can have their cake and eat it three in terms of patient-facing. Yeah, there we go. Patient-facing, a PLG and
Well,
enterprise.
Also, Price,
Yeah.
we should expect an announcement shortly if OpenEvidence is not working on it, that they find a clinical trials enrollment partner, right? Because like that feels like the obvious next thing to slap on here. Hey, we understand the clinical pathways and the relationship to drugs. We can help get prior auths done so that patients get on these drugs, and we can help with the discovery and development.
Yeah. And we're taking a big leap here, just to be clear. When I first read Mount Sinai to integrate OpenEvidence AI enterprise-wide, I'm like, so there'll be a smart on fire window in Epic where you can read about lymphoma, like recent, lymphoma rates, right? But I'm expecting that they use this as a wedge to say, well, we don't have this yet, but if you let your providers launch the Smart on Fire app and they can read my content, but you also let me read the patient's chart, then it'll be easier for me to serve what's relevant to you. And then if you let me read what the provider orders, I can make clinical decision support recommendations in real time. And before you know it, like I said, we made a jump from right now, this has nothing to do with PHI, and they're putting it into an EHR, and we're assuming that they're going to start letting actual chart data influence their care provision and their clinical decision support, and then eventually their models or their sort of business motion. But I guess I don't expect that to happen next month. We'll see.
That's why they need someone who help them do deep bidirectional integration work. Nadler, you know where to find us. I got one more thought here, which is they are shipping so much. And so they must be adopting LLMs to not vibe code, but like, to accelerate, and the marginal cost of development is dropping. And you can see it with companies like this, that you're just like, how are they doing an announcement of this magnitude every month? And I think it's a wake-up call for everyone in the industry that if you're not adopting real Claude Code type products or Codex-type products in your institution, you're behind, because you can really expand your roadmap, as they're very clearly doing. Doesn't mean like all these shots on goal are going to work, but like clearly they're shipping a lot with their war chest of money. And I think it's because behind the scenes they're using LLM-assisted development practices.
And to me, that's a double-edged sword. I'm far from an expert in training AI models and understanding differentiation there, but sometimes I hear about things like this, and I'm a little bit like, well, if this is an LLM wrapper on the corpus of scientific research that maybe is otherwise accessible, how quickly could an OpenAI or a Claude or a Doximity replicate this? They can do all this so fast, and so can everyone else. This is like when Americans moved west and people were rushing into Oklahoma. Thank you. The Sooners.
Well,
getting dysentery.
Well, I think that's why the sales nexus, the enterprise sales motion, is the important thing, because once you have that space, once you're in that workflow, it's easy. It's easy to bring partners along and just say like, hey, we're going to take care of this, because they have to fight for integration priority. That is the ability to quickly roll out a new feature means that sales is, and this is great for me, sales is quickly becoming far more important than product and engineering. So you guys now work for me, which is great.
Shots fired. Shots fired. One thing there is like in the PLG market, competition is a click away, is the saying there. And that's true, but like, look at Google. Like on the corpus of information available on the internet, we can go build a search tool. And yet everyone, 80% of people use Google. And so that's why they've always positioned themselves as the Google. But I think they look at it and they're like, shit, Doximity is shipping exactly that price. And others are shipping these competitive products. So we need to go lever over into enterprise so that competition is a contract away. Competition is a 2-year, 3-year contract away, right? Like that's a moat, and that's the moat that they jealously look at UpToDate every day and go, I wish we had that, to prevent the existential dread. So I think it's astute to call that out by both of you.
Here's my galaxy brain take for this podcast of anybody can build this. Well, I am constantly frustrated with getting my GLP-1 from my excellent PCP and his very responsive staff. But there was like nobody making sure that I'm getting that drug that is coming from their 340B pharmacy and making them a ton of money, except for me. And like, if I wasn't invested in getting my healthcare from an unnamed institution here in New York City, it would be really easy for me to just go online and find somebody who has a consumer experience to do that. And it turns out we now know that the cost of developing that is $20,000 because the New York Times is giving MEDVi maybe too rosy of coverage for what they've built, but allegedly generating it was $1.8 billion. Is that right? In revenue?
Yeah. But if you think about it, their operational costs are quite high. So MEDVi is one of many front ends on OpenLoop, which is a sort of telehealth by white label telehealth provider that allows for you to set up a provider practice of sorts with any branding you want. And so, their operational costs, like large part of whatever, if 1.8 is true, much of that is going to pay OpenLoop and pay for costs, but make no mistake, they're making a bunch of money.
They're competing against brands. 30 Medicine got bought. They're brands who had to put together all of this infrastructure. We didn't have the idea of a 50-state PC that was focused on telehealth. It took a decade of digital health pushing on that door to develop it. We didn't have the idea of mail delivery compound pharmacies. Like there's all these things that had to go in place. And then the part that really blows my mind is the cost of development of the website. It's a form, right? They're gathering information, they're shifting it over to OpenLoop, who's providing an asynchronous visit, and then a drug is showing up at the patient's door. Everything is LLM generated. They're not hiring actors. No.
Have you seen the form, by the way? It's like, what's your height? And then there's 6 options or 10 options that say like, 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then what's your number of inches? And then it listed down. It's just like, it's a UI atrocity. It's like war crime. So like, yeah, it's like maybe LLM generated. Also not the ideal flow, but somehow through a variety of tactics, converting people. But Price, you had something you wanted to say.
Well, I was going to, so yeah, we transitioned from OpenEvidence at Sinai to you can vibe code anything now, including a $1.8 billion revenue business. Good on, just shout out CMS, ONC. You're doing God's work because apparently there's a lot of organic competition that's shoving its way into these, software ecosystems with their elbows, saying I have the right to that data as well, and I'm going to use AI to build my product. I'm going to use AI in what my product spits out. So it's happening. That's what we wanted. And in some cases, it might be a little bit sketchier than in other cases as we shift to the MEDVi conversation. Brad, you were talking about PCs, and I was just learning about PCs and what's their counterpart? The
Macs.
PC.
MSOs?
MSO. Yeah. So explain to me the organizational structure of OpenLoop. How are these physicians staffed, or and is the founder of MEDVi the one who is staffing all of these physicians, or just leveraging their services to create his pipeline of prescription
Yeah, I mean, think of
profit.
open loop, the front door, the MSO, as collecting a bunch of services that are needed to enable telehealth businesses, whether that's like licensing you an EHR or a telemedical service or the actual providers that are going to see patients. Open loop does not employ them directly. They contract with professional corporations, and then those providers are delivering care under their own discretion, and
Got
they
it.
will continue to become the like it is equivalent to like I open a coffee shop, I use Square as my POS, and then Square, after I've done enough sales, Square Capital can make loans to me because they know what my cash flow looks like. They're just going to continue to hang tools on their toolbox or in their tool shed. A question arises: at what point does the collection of those tools in the tool shed start to look a little bit questionable? Which, Brendan, I don't know if you want to jump in and touch on something you've written about.
Yeah, I mean, MEDVi, this article came out. I'm like, man, this name sounds really familiar, but I don't do a ton in the GLP-1 space, and we don't do a ton in the GLP-1 space. A few
You guys are
customers
just skinny
historically.
by nature. Okay.
And yeah, but I'm ready for peptides.
Wait. That's the other part about the story that was crazy, is the speed which they could, okay, they hit GLP-1s and then they rolled out like hair loss, and they just looked at any other business and were like, we can build a cheaper mousetrap, and just rolled. It was crazy.
I mean, that's the article I wrote last summer, because this lawsuit, like most things that prompt me to think about healthcare, a lawsuit came out against OpenLoop that alleged that they were masterminding this sea of fraud, these fraudulent websites across the internet that were spun up to prescribe oral GLP-1s, which this particular compound is not an oral, it can't be consumed orally. It tears a medglutide. I don't
It's
know.
a
We can look at the
glutide.
article. But I am not a doctor. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a doctor. And so I went back and looked at that article, and lo and behold, one of the shell websites, shell companies that was named in the lawsuit as, Open Loop set up a fake website, was this company, MEDVi. And so we now know that's not true, that there's a guy or two guys that are behind this. They are a real company making some amount of real money. But that means that the allegations that are put in there about the fraudulentness of it need to be directed probably at MEDVi and not at Open Loop. They're not, they're not named in the lawsuit, but there's a lot of chatter on Twitter and some good threads. And Rick Renard posted a great post breaking down that, okay, they're making real money. Okay, they're real, but there are tactics, there are things, the way they're appealing to patients, that could be deceptive of patients. And that's fraud. Fraud is not the existence or realness of a company. It is, are you deceiving the consumer? And they could be many people are pointing out that they may be breaking FTC, FDA, other law regulations and laws. And so, like, we're not going to go and adjudicate that. We are not lawyers. We are not judges. But there is plenty of banter about that out on the market today. Brad, what were you going to say?
It seems like one of the major issues is that many brands were marketing oral trizepatide, which is like the fact that the product catalog was the same across all of these brands seemed like the part of that lawsuit that the prosecution was most focused on, because trizepatide cannot be delivered orally as far as we know. I think it's trizepatide. I don't know. Why do I know how to pronounce these drugs? This does not need to be space in my brain.
I just think one takeaway, this was in the original article, is that the power of the internet is the ability to reach national and international audiences for trivial amounts of money, for the marginal cost of building global businesses or national businesses has dropped dramatically. And so if you and I want to set up a fraudulent or a business that was doing fraudulent behaviors, historically it was like, okay, let's go prescribe ADHD meds in mass. Okay, we're just doing it in our geography. We're bound by geography. And in the age of the internet, well, you can spin up and reach entire audiences at a global or national scale instantly. And so long as you can then utilize that potential audience and get a meaningful percentage of it, the potential harms you can do are therefore much larger, much quicker. And so we've seen it with certainly with ADHD meds and cerebral back in the day. We see it now again rear its head here. We've seen it with scandals of opioids.
Yeah.
We've seen what other drugs have we seen it before? We see this all the time.
I think the difference, the internet compresses the cost to distribute information, but whoever wrote the paper about the transistor that led to LLMs, we now have technology that greatly reduces the cost to generate content, words, whatnot. And that collision of super easy to distribute and super easy to create the content to distribute is that's what makes the acceleration of this business possible, but also fascinating.
And think about it. If we have AI doctors, right? Now, just imagine there's some doctor behind the scenes of open loop. But now we don't need that infrastructure because we have AI doctors and they're fully legalized. Like, this highlights the need for guardrails as we go down that path, because all of a sudden, can you spin up a doctor and can you spin up a website? Great. You can suddenly do the full chain for marginal costs. And so I don't think I know the answer, or potentially you guys know the answer, but this shows that the harm can be done very, very quickly, very, very broadly.
In Rick's post, it says that in their software, you can enter a birthday of February 31st.
Oh my God.
And then the app will tell you you're quite likely of hitting your goal weight of 200 pounds, even if you're 7'11", 350 pounds. So it's like Shaq hoping to
have you guys seen
cut himself in half.
Charles Barkley is? He looks great.
Good for him.
He's got the row. He's got the row, You know what else this is making me think of? You can build things so fast, and like the law and the repercussions of fraudulent activity or poorly designed software, clinical consequences. It now lags. How fast you can build it and distribute it, and it's making me think of like how executive orders keep on happening in our country, and then a year later we find out, we can't erase the last year, but you can't actually do that. And it's like there's a lot going on in the world right now that's like, boom, the internet, LLMs lets people create so fast that we're having trouble.
How can we keep up? How can we keep up?
Safe. And sometimes it's awesome. Like, yeah, it's productive. It should be a release valve on the healthcare system, which is way overburdened. It should be deflationary. I was listening to the CityBlock CEO Toyan speak about this on the HDN podcast. But like, you want to see these things be deflationary in healthcare, and instead, oftentimes they're used by folks who are like, how quickly we could prop up a lot of profit, and so we're seeing a lot of inflation, right? Instead of a release of like, the burden of like how we don't have enough providers in the country and things like that. Instead, it's like, well, for the providers we do have, we can help them upcode all the way. So the government owes everybody more money. Anyway, this is just another example of like, I don't think this is helping the crisis that we're having.
I had posted, 9 months ago, 12 months ago, where I was just feeling that exact thing where I'm like, it is far easier if you're an entrepreneur to make money off of making new money than versus reduction of cost. Like, it just is. And so the technological innovations we see go towards activating healthy consumers and patients to do new things, to spend more money a lot of times. Like, that's just everything we're talking about. Even the patient empowerment stuff we see via the CMS health tech ecosystem, well, all of a sudden you're activating the healthy middle that never is engaged in their health. That's really good, but the short-term effects of activating this population to use more healthcare is going to increase costs, right? More people that were just not doing things, which probably long-term is bad for their health. Well, if they are utilizing all their benefits and things like that, and spending out of pocket on all these different things, that's more cost short term. And so I got kind of depressed a while ago because of that, because I was just like, well, how are we ever going to fix this? And maybe Chris Klomp, maybe Chris Klomp is the answer. It seems like he's being thrown around all over the CMS as the person who's going to make things deflationary, and I do have faith in him.
Yeah, we got to give the law heads what they want. The people come here for, yeah, the
For
wonkery.
wonkery.
Let's get,
Wonkery.
is there a new acronym?
Price, what you hear?
Well, we're back. We are so back. We are the ONC again. The HHS, Department of Health and Human Services, has many offices within it, and one of those is the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, which uses a lot of the U.S. budget. Another one of them, much smaller, and maybe I'd say scrappier, very exciting in nature, is the Office of the National Coordinator, which it was first named the Office of the National Coordinator for Health IT when Bush W had created it with like an executive order, and then the last Biden administration changed it to the ASTP. So if you're familiar with that acronym, that was the Assistant Secretary for Technology Policy. We've got my ASTP name tag right here. Amazing logo for the ASTP.
Vintage stuff. Hold on to that. That's gonna be worth a lot.
I got my vintage Redux swag. Yeah, this is gonna go on eBay in like 20 years. I'll be like holographic ASTP name tag.
If they were smart, look, they don't have much budget. They get 50 million ever since Bush. If they're smart, they would have sold swag at the ASTP annual meeting. That was a golden opportunity. They know this is coming. They know they've been working on it. They could have sold it. Everyone would have bought it. Problem solved. Deficit solved.
Do we think, is it legal for like government offices to become like?
When has legal ever been a problem for this administration? Like, we'll figure out in courts. Sell the t-shirts. Should we sell the t-shirts?
I was thinking we should like get Dr. Kane to do like a collab with like Supreme or something. Just super expensive clothes that say ASTP or now ONC on them. That would be great.
It's like the original LM era, like a couple years ago, where the Pope had the puffy jacket on. Have you seen that? We should do that sort of thing, but ASTP.
Super swagged. Yeah. So with the change of this office from its name being the ASTP back to being the ONC, what else is happening? They divvied up some responsibilities.
It's really not that much of a change. It's like what Mickey Tripathi did in summer 2024 is he pulled together a few other divisions, so he could do more with AI. Basically, was his goal. And so he had the chief AI officer or something as part of his title or under him, some other C-suite type people within the agency. And now they're kicked over to another part, just reorged out. And their mandate and mission doesn't change that much. Like even the verbiage and the verb that Mickey Tripathi added in that change is maintained. And so it doesn't change much. And historically, I wrote posts about this, but it just went through. It's like actually almost every head of the ONC has done a reorg or multiple reorgs, and usually Democrats have added more, more sub agencies and things like that, and then generally Republicans, especially Trump, has tried to slim it back down. And so it's not crazy. And if the pendulum swings and Democrats get elected, guess what? Maybe we see more additions to the ONC, and I don't know if we'll do a name change again. But because the ONC, let's go through it. Office of the National Coordinator versus Assistant Secretary for Technology Policy. The former is better, objectively better. ONC versus
ONC is easier to say, for sure.
And then the logo.
ASTP, way better. ASTP's is way better. No offense.
First part, you were in a fight. You like Assistant Secretary for Technology Policy better than Office of National Coordinator?
I always liked saying, I don't know, I think those words roll off the tongue if you can say them quickly. I also loved saying like, oh, yeah, hanging out with Steve Posnack is like hanging out with the assistant to the Assistant Secretary for Technology Policy.
I do like
you get
that.
A little bit of the office is like
I do like that.
assistant, So I'll miss those jokes. Something else that happened, I've got a friend that works at the ONC, and I found out that he's within the Office of Policy, and that was call it the OPOL, I think, internally it's the OPOL, but they just changed the name of that to the Office of Programs and Implementation, which I think should be called the O-PIMP now. So they've changed that name, and I'm a huge fan of that change if we want to start abbreviating that. So
I think we should. This administration has also been really focused in the CMS world on like access and like fun. I don't know what those are called. Where you make an acronym of everything.
Acronyms.
But like why not the ONC? Like, let's dial it up here.
What do we call it? Oh gosh, we'll come up with
So
a good name.
we got a few minutes left. Do we want to cover anything
I
else before
mean,
we close out?
the people are asking,
But
what is an HIN? And I think we have to tell them.
Brendan, you wrote about this. Maybe you want to tell us what you wrote about, and then I'll start commenting on my
I'll
thoughts.
just throw this in there, Brendan. I don't really care about the Henry Schein case. I know you're like deep into it, but when you create grids, I'll read every one of his posts. So if you could just lead with the
There for it.
grids, like I'll fight through the rest.
Okay. The Excalidraw, that's the tool I use. It makes it look hand-drawn. Yeah, Henry Schein versus Vyne is just a vehicle and a vessel for a very important conversation, which is what is an HIE? And so why are we having that conversation when Vyne, a point solution, a clearinghouse for dental, and Henry Schein, an EHR for dental, neither of them on paper are what we think of when it comes to HIE? Well, it's because the point solution looking to use the Cures Act, the information blocking rules against Henry Schein, the EHR, was unable to because Henry Schein backed out of the certification program to avoid ostensibly information blocking burden. And so
just to be clear, there was an EHR who was certified by the government. And that's important. Lots of EHRs do that because oftentimes you need to do that in order to get reimbursement from the CMS and things like that. So lots of reasons to voluntarily certify your electronic health record. But if you do so, you immediately become susceptible to, you are considered an actor as a developer of certified technology that could commit info blocking, which is really broadly defined as discouraging the exchange of electronic health information. So unlike most other industries where competitors fiercely hoard data and don't share it at all, within the healthcare industry, the Cures Act says you have to share that data because it's the patient's data and other providers need it and blah, 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 blah. And so we're seeing this expanding ecosystem of like, you better share that data or you better make APIs. And you're saying Henry Schein, being a dental EHR, had pulled away from being certified. It was after this lawsuit was filed, wasn't it?
yeah, and that's like one of the things that doesn't make it. I know, Brad, you said you don't want the specifics, but like the thing where I'm like, I'm not a lawyer, but what seems obvious is the behaviors that were information blocking occurred last March, 2025. They were a certified EHR. They were a developer of certified health IT, Henry Schein. And so you could claim that those behaviors were information blocking.
Yeah.
And they decertified, they withdrew in August or July, and the case was like September. And so then behaviors after then are nebulous. But it's like, why didn't you go harder in the paint on that one? Because that's like that seems like slam dunk stuff.
Right. Vyne, who's suing Henry Schein,
Right.
didn't call that out.
Yeah, they did lightly in their opening brief, and then just in these transcripts and stuff, they just talk about HIEs and HINs, and we'll talk about why they go there next. But like, instead, do the easy slam dunk, no nebulous definition route.
So within information blocking, there's 3 different types of actors. So these 3 types of organizations need to be very careful that they're not committing info blocking. One being providers, not really a way to skirt around that. If you're a provider, you're a provider, right? The second being a certified developer of electronic health technology, which is a lot of major EHRs would then be, actors who could commit info blocking. And the third actor type, which is very nebulously defined, as Brendan, I think, loves and loves to pull apart, is health information networks, or do they call it HIEs?
HIE/HIN.
Okay. So the point being here, Vyne might have missed an opportunity to say, well, obviously they were an actor who could commit info blocking because they were a certified electronic health technology. And now they're sort of saying, well, maybe they're an HIE. This is an EHR that they're saying was acting as a health information exchange. So let's go into the details of like what makes an HIE. Tell me about the preamble and all of that stuff, Brendan.
So essentially, when you're exchanging data, there's only like 3 patterns. One is decentralized. So everyone's a node on the network and you send from point to point. And so that could be a network that sets rules for exchange between their participants, could be an health information network. And many of those types of networks, Direct Trust, DataVan, what are other good point-to-point, Care Quality, like those are all point-to-point between nodes.
Meaning
those could be.
All of the nodes trust each other, but you don't get all of the information, all the healthcare information in the world, and put it in one centralized server. Instead, the network is that you have a phone book, basically, and everyone in that phone book has a cert that proves like I'm in the phone book and you can trust me.
Yeah, and like in the preamble, they carve out the ONC and they say, actually, if you're doing bilateral exchange between two parties, is what that means, then you're not, like that's generally not going to be an HIE, HIN. And so most of those networks of that type topology, even if it's routing through a central thing like DataBand or something, say we're doing bilateral exchange and we're good. We're not an HIN because we're not storing the data. We're not facilitating like a fan out. And so the other end of the spectrum is what we think of when we think of state health information exchanges stored in a big database. So everyone pushes data up, and then when they need it, they pull data down. That model, that's what actually Henry Schein is saying. Well, wait a minute. We, as an API provider with an API program, people push data up to us, different apps that don't know each other, to a single provider's system, and they can pull down the data between that app one pushes up. And that is what sort of like what, if you look at a state HIE, most function that way, where provider one pushes up, provider two pulls down. And so there's Henry Schein saying, no. That model, we're not an HIE, HIN either. But if that's right, then state HIEs of that model aren't HIEs or HINs. And so then the only remaining class of network that actually would fall into the definition would be ones where you send up a query and it goes to many participants, right? One to many, inherently not bilateral, potentially. But then at the end of the day, you just keep squinting at this. And I bet you every HIE, HIN, EHR, they look at this and their lawyers say, we're not in this definition. And that can be fine. But like right now, it's very ambiguous whether it's, because if it's Henry Schein is wrong, well, then everybody is an HIE or HIN if you offer an API.
If you offer an API and have multiple parties connected into you and you receive or share or reconcile the data, that, yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, so like it's like, where is the line? And I don't like this one. I hate it because it's so infuriating. And so in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, we're gonna have a judge make the first call on what's an HIE, HIN in this case. And that's what's important. And that's when we know if non-certified EHRs get looped in, that's when I swear to God, every clearinghouse, every ADT network, every network in America, their lawyers are hyper focused on this case because it could draw them into actor status. And if they're not, they better be paying attention.
Do we think like this judge who's going to make this verdict has clerks, or he or she themselves are like calling the ONC and being like, what were you writing about here? Like, how should I interpret it? Is that something that they do? Because it's so much ambiguity.
Yeah, the judge is showing a really strong grasp of these concepts right, like they're thrown all over the board. They are federal judges.
I think they're subscribed to Health API guys. It's crazy.
I haven't seen any of those domains come in, but he shows a strong grasp. But he's showing a very traditional view on computer fraud and abuse. The CFFAA, which is what Henry Schein is accusing them of, and is really diving into the bilateral thing when interrogating Vyne. But at the same time, sometimes they go really hard in the questioning, and then they go and read the statute and they read the guidance and stuff that the agencies have released. I don't know if they phone them up. I don't think that they do that. I think they generally rely on public artifacts and the law, and they're going to make a call. And so he could make a call that really redefines this line. And so we shall see.
Well, and one more question is how would that redefine the line? Is it now there's legal precedent, and would that only be in Maryland, or would that be federally and precedent more like, oh, I feel more comfortable making a decision like this because this guy made that decision in Maryland? Or is it like, oh no, I can use this as a legal artifact from now on?
It's both end, right? Like it is limited to whatever the district court is over, Maryland and maybe some other areas. And then if it's appealed, you see broader. If it's appealed again, Supreme Court, that's when you get pretty uniform stuff. But yeah, absolutely, there's regionalization. But just one precedent allows for someone to point from a favorable jurisdiction, someone in California point and say, hey, look what happened in Maryland. And we have laws that kind of overlay on that allow them. So like they can't point to it as pure precedent, But then what you'll see is Henry Schein and Vyne. That was Vyne filed in Maryland, not in Utah, which is what they could have filed in because they both have headquarters there or they both have offices there. And that's a very strategic choice to use the real-time medical point of care precedent. But so we could see similar if it breaks a little bit towards Vyne or fully towards Vyne. But we are over time, so I think we got to wrap.
Yeah, we got to go back to our normal jobs.
And this was a fun one. So
Hey,
Good
guys.
see
Friday.
you all later.
See ya.